Hello, Melissa and Scott. It is Tuesday, February 6th, which is 8 weeks and 1 day after I was supposed to post my video. And this week's theme is caught up. I'm thinking of a couple of things this week. First of all, I'm really glad it's a snow day. Secondly, that it is not possible to balance one toothpick on the head of another toothpick. More on that in a second. And three, that it's been a while and we should catch up. Alright, so my first topic was a little bit misleading. In college, you don't actually get snow days most of the time because the professors come to class anyway. I have a snow day today because my street that I drive on to get to places from where I live is not one of the more widely used streets, which means that it's not in great shape right now. We got a lot of snow yesterday and last night, which was beautiful. Does mean that I'm going to be hanging out in my apartment until I can find the shovel or whatever that my landlord has hidden. Had some meetings that I'm missing, which is bad, but because it's a snow day and I don't have classes, I'm here vlogging with you! Yay! My second point actually brings in part 2 of this video, so we're gonna hop there and then hop back to think about what I'm learning. It's this. How does one toothpick balanced on the head of another toothpick? Now, admittedly, I hadn't given a lot of thought to whether one toothpick could balance on the head of another, but once I did think about it, because it was a task given to students in the Perspectives on Curriculum class that I'm the teaching assistant for, I would have thought, no way, is that a thing that's going to be able to happen? Even with the aid of forks and a salt shaker. It's just silly. Why would a toothpick be able to balance that way? I had a previous conception of toothpicks as things that did not balance on each other because I had never seen them balance on each other before, and also they don't seem like particularly sturdy objects. Now, Piaget would refer to this construction I had of toothpicks as a schema. A schema is like a set of rules that you have that fits into how you see things in the world and things that are in the world. Now, when you counter something that's opposite of the schema you have, that is the previous notion of the way you saw something before, that is counter to that schema, you're thrown into a moment of disequilibrium. This moment of disequilibrium is a powerful teaching tool because the brain doesn't like to be in disequilibrium. It wants to know why. And your brain with this information can do either one of two things, according to Piaget. It can assimilate that information or it can accommodate that information. If that information is assimilated, it's changed or adapted from what it actually is to fit your preconceived schema. Or your schema can accommodate that information, meaning that you restructure how you see things to fit the new information. So in the toothpick scenario, an example of assimilation would be I look at the toothpick and I tell my instructor exactly what I told him when I got it to balance, which is must be magic, because my previous conception was that it would be impossible to balance one toothpick on the head of another. Accommodating that information, by contrast, would look something like me saying, okay, so with the proper tools, a toothpick can balance on the head of another because balance happens based in part on where the center of mass is in an object, and the center of mass need not actually be like the center spatially in the object, it can be floating in the middle of space, as is with the toothpick and the counterbalance created by the forks. You may have noticed that assimilating that information was a lot less complex than trying to accommodate it, mostly because accommodation often requires like a more complex solution. I need a lot more background information and understandings of things like physics in order to really make that process make sense in my mind, which maybe has something to do with why it is so hard to change the opinions of someone who has rooted their whole life around a misconception. Sound familiar? And part 3 of what I'm thinking about is that it's been a long time since I've vlogged and we should catch up. It's also been a long time since I was at Knox. It was like 6 months that I was living in Iowa and not at school. And that means I missed some things. One of the things I missed was the release date of the issue of Catch, which is the on-campus literary magazine that I made it into last year. Normally you find Catch like everywhere on campus, but I had the hardest time finding the edition that I was printed in. I can only find one copy, and that was the community copy sitting in the Gizmo, which is the restaurant on campus. I pulled the community copy from the shelf that's in the Gizmo, and I explained my issue to Bev, who I was eating lunch with, and she said, just take it, it's yours. Which leads me to the second thing I learned this week. Given the appropriate amount of desperation and peer pressure, I can be persuaded to steal books. The song of the week is Nightmares by All Time Low. It's very moody. Some of the lyrics from the chorus, I believe, are Now there's a ghost in the back of this room and I don't like it, which I have to explain to the ghost who may or may not be living in my apartment that I don't mean it, and then I have to apologize because, you know, we share the space. For your pup date, Trouble and Scruffles both got spayed rather recently. Scruffles was having issues with licking her stitches, so here she is in a collar that Diana found. She looks happy in these pictures, but please allow me to assure you that she does not like her collar at all and spends a lot of time trying to get it off. And Trouble, being far too spastic for her own good, seems to have pulled something, because last I spoke to Mom, her stitches were bleeding and things, so I'm actually pretty worried about that. I realize that sort of ends on a downer, so I'm going to try to find some good puppy footage to put in here of Trouble. Here's my M&M. Have an awesome week.